My apartment burned down. I texted family. The kids and I are safe, but homeless. Silence. An hour later, my sister posted family only. Weeks later, they called nonstop. I said, only calls from people I know. I stood on the street in my old pajamas at 3 a.m, barefoot, holding Mark close to me as he cried uncontrollably. My 6-year-old son was shaking all over, burying his face in my shoulder, while I looked up at the window of our third-floor apartment, which was engulfed in flames. Red and yellow tongues of fire licked the bricks, consuming the curtains, the furniture, our lives. The fire siren wailed so loudly that it hurt my ears, and people in helmets ran around shouting commands and dragging hoses. Someone threw a blanket over my shoulders, but I didn't feel it. All I could feel was my heart pounding in my throat and one thought spinning in my head. Everything was burned. Everything. "Mom," Mark sobbed, and I hugged him tighter, kissing him on the top of his head. He smelled of smoke and baby shampoo. "It's okay, sweetie, we're alive. That's what matters." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. I remembered how it all started. I woke up from the smell. At first, I thought the neighbors were burning something in the kitchen, but the smell grew stronger, acrid. Then I heard a crackling sound. I jumped out of bed, opened the door to the room, and saw smoke. Thick, black smoke. Coming from the living room. I rushed to Mark, grabbed him from the bed, and he started crying, not understanding what was happening. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, shoved it in my pajama pocket, and we ran to the exit. The hallway was already filled with smoke, and I could barely see the door. Mark was coughing, and so was I. My eyes stung so much that I wanted to scream. We ran out onto the stairwell. I pulled my son by the hand, and he stumbled and cried. Other neighbors were also running downstairs. Some were screaming, and some were calling the fire department. People were already standing on the street looking at the building. I looked too and saw flames bursting out of our window. A firefighter approached me, a tall man with a tired face covered in soot. "Ma'am, do you have somewhere to go tonight?" I nodded mechanically, although I didn't really know. I had no bag, no phone. No, wait, I did have my phone. Nothing else. No money, no documents, no clothes. Everything was there, in the fire. "Are you sure?" He looked at me doubtfully. "Yes," I lied. "I have somewhere to go." He nodded and walked away to his colleagues. I took out my phone with trembling hands. The screen was intact. The battery was at 20%. I opened the Messenger app and found the family chat: Mom, Dad, Emma. The last time I wrote there was 3 months ago when Mark started first grade. I sent a photo of him standing outside the school with his backpack, looking so proud and grown up. No one replied. Mom liked it. Emma didn't. I typed a message trying to keep my fingers from shaking. "Mark and I are safe, but we have nowhere to go." I pressed send and stared at the screen. Message delivered, read. I waited. 1 minute, 2, 5, 10. Nothing. Mark fell asleep in my arms from exhaustion, and I sat on a bench across the street from our house, watching the firefighters extinguish what used to be our home. Neighbors stood in groups, whispering, pointing. Someone brought me tea in a paper cup. I didn't drink it. It sat on the bench next to me, steaming until it cooled down. The phone was silent. I stared at the screen and remembered. I remembered how 5 years ago I stood in this same family chat and wrote a different message. "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant." It was the end of March. I had just taken the test, twice, 3 times, not believing it. 2 lines, always 2 lines. I was panicking, but deep down, I was happy. I remembered Matthew. I remembered that party in a loft on the other side of town, where music was playing and everyone was dancing, and he came up to me with 2 glasses, smiled in a way that took my breath away. We talked all night. He talked about studying law, about his father who wanted him to go into the family business, but he wasn't sure. I told him about my job at the car dealership, where I had just started managing social media, and how I loved coming up with creative posts. He was smart, funny, and gentle. He kissed me as if I were the most important person in the world, and then he disappeared. When I wrote to him about my pregnancy, he read it and blocked me everywhere. Just like that. No conversation, no explanation, as if I didn't exist. I called, wrote from other accounts, even came to his university. He walked past me as if I were air. But I thought my family would support me, that my mom would hug me and say everything would be okay, that my dad would joke around as usual and lighten the mood, that Emma, my younger sister, would be there for me. Instead, I got a call from my mother an hour after that message. "Are you out of your mind?" She wasn't yelling, but her voice was cold as ice. "Do you even realize what you've done?" "Mom, you've ruined our name, Sarah. You got pregnant by some guy from a party. You don't even know him properly. How am I supposed to look people in the eye? What am I supposed to tell them?" I cried, tried to say something, but she kept going. "Emma would never do that. She's smart, responsible. She's finishing college. She has a normal boyfriend. And you... God, I'm so embarrassed. I'm just embarrassed for you." Dad was silent. He was always silent when Mom talked. I could hear him breathing on the phone, but he didn't say a word. Emma texted me privately later. "Listen, I love you, but this is really not cool. Mom is a nervous wreck. Maybe I should have been more careful. You know what I mean?" I gave birth to Mark alone. Laura was with me in the delivery room, holding my hand when it hurt so much I thought I was going to die. Mom and Dad came to the hospital on the third day, looked at their grandson, gave us an envelope with money, and left after 20 minutes. Emma sent a photo from a cafe with the caption, "You're a mom now, hang in there." She didn't even come. Since then, I've become a ghost in the family. I was invited to celebrations, but it felt formal, like it was just out of obligation. I came with Mark, sat quietly, and listened to Emma talk about her achievements, her new job as a barista at a trendy coffee shop, her new boyfriend with tattoos, her new hairstyle from an expensive salon. Mom listened to her with adoration. Dad nodded approvingly, asked for details. They looked right through me. When Mark said something, Mom smiled stiffly and quickly switched her attention to Emma. I stopped coming after last Christmas, when Mark asked why Grandma didn't want to play with him. I stopped writing in the chat. They didn't notice, or they pretended not to notice. And now I was sitting on a cold bench with a sleeping child in my arms, looking at my phone, where my message was marked as read but unanswered. The clock showed 5 in the morning. At 11 in the morning, Laura came to pick me up. She hugged me so tightly that I could barely breathe, picked up Mark, put us in the car, and drove us to her place. "Stay as long as you need," she said simply. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, looking out the window. We arrived at her small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. Mark was still asleep, so I laid him on the sofa and covered him with a blanket. He wrinkled his nose in his sleep but didn't wake up. Laura made coffee and sat me down at the table. "Have you been in touch with your family?" she asked cautiously. I nodded. "And?" "Nothing." She pursed her lips but said nothing. I shouldn't have. Laura knew my family. She was the only one who came to see me after I gave birth, who sat with me when Mark was sick and I didn't sleep for 3 nights in a row, who lent me money when I didn't have enough to pay for the apartment. She knew everything. I drank my coffee and began to sort through my thoughts. I needed to call work and explain the situation. I needed to find out what was happening with the apartment, whether there was insurance. I needed a place to live. I needed things. Clothes for Mark, for me, money. Laura seemed to read my mind. "I have clothes that will fit you. I'll buy some for Mark today. I don't have much money, but it will be enough for now." "Laura, you don't have to. You already—" "Shut up," she said softly, and I fell silent. In the evening, when Mark woke up and was eating pasta in Laura's kitchen, I opened social media. I don't know why. Maybe to distract myself. Maybe to see something normal, ordinary. And I saw a photo. Emma had posted it 2 hours ago. A photo in the yard of her parents' house, summer sun, a barbecue grill, smiling faces, Mom in an apron holding a plate of meat, Dad is standing next to a can of beer, joking with Emma's boyfriend. Emma is hugging him, a tall guy with tattoos on his arms, whom I've seen once or twice at family gatherings. Caption, "For family only." Time of publication, 12:30 p.m., an hour after my message in the chat. I looked at that photo and felt so cold that I couldn't breathe. They knew. They read it. They knew that my apartment had burned down, that I had nowhere to go, that I was on the street with my child. And they went to grill meat. They smiled at the camera. They posted a photo with a caption about family. Mark said something, but I didn't hear it. I just sat and stared at the screen until Laura took the phone out of my hands. "Don't," she said quietly. "Sarah, don't do this to yourself." But I had already seen it, and I already understood. They never forgave me, and they never will. To them, I will always be a mistake, a disgrace, the one who ruined the picture of the perfect family. I didn't cry. I just nodded, got up, walked over to Mark, and hugged him. "Mom, what's wrong?" he asked, looking at me with his big brown eyes so similar to Matthew's. "Nothing, dear. I just love you very, very much." He smiled and went back to his pasta, and I thought, let them be. Let them fry their meat. Let them live their lives, their perfect picture. I'll live mine, without them. And for the first time in many years, I felt something like relief. The first 3 days at Lori's, I lived in a fog. In the morning, I called work and explained the situation to my boss, who muttered something about me being able to work remotely for a week or two while I sorted things out. Then I sat at Laura's old laptop and tried to focus on posts for the car dealership, but the letters blurred before my eyes. Mark sat next to me, drawing with pencils that Laura had bought at the nearest store. He was quiet, not joking as usual, and that scared me the most. In the evening, I looked for apartments to rent. The prices were crazy. They wanted as much for a 1-bedroom as I earned in a month. For a 2-bedroom, even more. Plus a deposit, plus the first month in advance. I had a little over $1,000 in my account. All that was left after paying the utilities for the past month. "Maybe you can find something cheaper on the outskirts?" Laura suggested, standing behind me with a cup of tea. "The outskirts are far from Mark's school, and from my work, too." "Then stay here. Seriously, Sarah, it's not hard for me." I looked at her. Laura lived alone in this 1-bedroom apartment, worked as an administrator at a dental clinic, and barely made ends meet. She didn't have the money to support 2 freeloaders. "Laura, you're a gem. But I can't do this. We need our own place." She sighed but didn't argue. That evening, when Mark fell asleep on the sofa, I sat on the floor by the window and looked at my phone. The family chat was still quiet. My message hung there alone, read and ignored. Emma posted new photos from the coffee shop where she worked, with her boyfriend, with her friends. She smiled, posed, lived her bright life. Mom liked every photo. I blocked the app and put my phone away. On the 3rd day, when I had already started calling about apartment listings, hearing yet another already rented or 3 months deposit required, someone knocked on the door. Laura was at work. Mark was watching cartoons. I went over and looked through the peephole and froze. Matthew was standing at the door. He looked different than he did 5 years ago, older. He was wearing an expensive dark blue suit. His hair was neatly combed. His face was clean shaven. He was holding a phone and looked nervous. I opened the door, not all the way, leaving the chain on. "What are you doing here?" My voice was cold, like my mother's when she told me she was pregnant. He looked up, brown eyes like Mark's. I always remembered that. "Sarah, hi, can I come in?" "No." He nodded as if he had expected that. "I saw you on the news," he said quietly. "About the fire. I recognized you. And the boy." I was silent. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "I want to help." I laughed, shortly, bitterly. "Help? Now? Where were you 5 years ago, Matthew? Where were you when I was giving birth? When I couldn't sleep at night because Mark was crying? Where were you when I didn't have enough to eat and I ate once a day so he would have enough? He pressed his lips together. Something like pain appeared on his face. I know. I know I behaved like a jerk. I was young, scared, and ran away. It's unforgivable. But now? Now what? I interrupted. Now you're curious? Has your conscience gotten the better of you? Both, he said honestly. Sarah, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but the boy, Mark, right? He's my child. And you shouldn't have to suffer because of my meanness 5 years ago. I wanted to slam the door and tell him to go to hell, but something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was despair. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't slept properly in 3 days and had no idea how to get out of this mess. What do you want? I asked. To talk. 5 minutes. Please. I looked at Mark. He was sitting on the sofa, engrossed in a cartoon, paying no attention to the conversation at the door. I sighed and took off my necklace. Matthew entered cautiously, as if afraid I would change my mind. I pointed to a chair at the table and remained standing with my arms crossed over my chest. Talk. He sat down, put his phone on the table, and ran his hand through his hair. I'm a lawyer. I've been working at my father's firm for 3 years. I earn well, very well. I can help you financially. I want to help. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Because I owe you. Because Mark is my child and I wasn't there for him, but I want to be there for him now. How did you find me? The news showed how you were evacuated. They gave the address of the house. I know people who know people. I found out you were staying here. It wasn't hard. I looked at him. He seemed sincere. But he seemed sincere 5 years ago, too, when he kissed me and whispered that I was special. I don't need your help, I said. Sarah, I don't need it. I can handle it myself, just like I have for the last 5 years. He fell silent, looking at me. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I understand. But take this. He took an envelope out of his suit's inside pocket and put it on the table. It's a check for $200,000. It's not a gift. It's what I owed for Mark's support these past 5 years. And starting next month, I'll send $10,000 every month, whether you want it or not. I stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. I don't want your money. It's not my money, it's Mark's money. He's entitled to it. You can reject me, but don't reject him. He's your son, but he's mine too. And I want him to have everything he needs. I clenched my fists. I wanted to say no. I wanted to throw the envelope in his face, but I thought about the apartments I couldn't afford, the things I needed to buy for Mark, the fact that Laura couldn't feed us forever. Why now? I asked quietly. Why not a year ago, or 2, or 5? He looked me in the eyes. Because a year ago, I was a coward. 2 years ago, too. 5 years ago, even more so. But now I saw you on the news, I saw the boy, and I realized that if I don't do this now, I'll be a coward for the rest of my life. I was silent. He stood up. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. Take the money, find a place to live, make a life for yourself. If you ever want me to meet Mark, let me know. If not, I'll understand. But the money will come every month. It's my decision, not yours. He walked to the door, opened it, and turned around. My number is in the envelope. If you need anything, call me. Anytime. And he left. I stood in the middle of the room, staring at the envelope on the table. Mark came up to me and tugged at my t-shirt. Mom, who was that? I sat down next to him and hugged him. No one, sweetie, just a man. He nodded and went back to his cartoons. I walked over to the table and picked up the envelope. Inside was a check for $200,000 and a business card. Matthew Carrington, lawyer, Carrington and Partners. The phone number was handwritten on the back. I sat down and stared at the check for a long time. I thought about pride, about how I promised myself I would never take anything from him. I thought about what my mother would say. He doesn't owe you anything. You got yourself into this mess. I thought about Emma, who would probably call me a fool if I refused. And then I thought about Mark, about how he asked why he didn't have toys like other children, how I had refused to take him to the circus because we didn't have the money, how we lived from paycheck to paycheck, and I was constantly afraid that I would get sick and not be able to work. This wasn't about me. It was about him. I picked up the phone and called Matthew. He answered after the first ring. "Hello?" "I'll take the money," I said, "but not for myself, for Mark, and that doesn't mean I've forgiven you." "I understand. And if you want to see him, I need time to prepare him, to figure things out for myself. As long as you need, I can wait." I hung up and put the phone away. The next day, I cashed the check and started looking for an apartment. Now I had more options. I found a small 2-room apartment in a decent neighborhood, not far from Mark's school. The landlord asked for 2 months' deposit, which I paid in cash. He didn't even ask where I got the money. A week later, we moved in. I bought Mark a new bed, a wardrobe, toys, and clothes. For myself, I bought only the bare essentials. There was still a lot left, so I put it in a separate account, just in case. Laura helped me unpack and arrange things. "Where did the money come from?" she asked directly when Mark went to his room. "From Matthew." She whistled. "Seriously, how do you feel about that?" I thought for a moment. I don't know. It felt strange, like I had betrayed myself, but at the same time, relieved. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of not being able to pay the rent. "It's okay," Laura said. "You didn't betray yourself. You accepted help for your son. Those are 2 different things." I nodded, hoping she was right. That evening, when Mark was already asleep in his new bed, I stood by the window and looked out at the city. The apartment was warm, cozy, ours. The phone was lying on the windowsill. I glanced at it. The family chat was still silent. And suddenly, I didn't care. I felt something release in my chest. They didn't write. Well, fine. I have a roof over my head. Mark has everything he needs, and I don't owe them anything. I picked up the phone and blocked the chat. I didn't delete it, I just muted the notifications. I didn't need to see Emma's barbecue photos anymore. I started to move on, without them. The first call came 2 weeks after I moved. I was sitting at work at the car dealership, editing a video for a story about a new crossover, when my phone vibrated on the table. Dad. I looked at the screen and put the phone aside without answering. He called again, then again. I ignored the third call and continued working. 15 minutes later, my mother called. I ignored her call too. Then Emma called. I ignored that one too. Laura, who was coming over for lunch, raised an eyebrow. "Have your relatives finally remembered you exist?" "Looks like it." "What are you going to do?" I shrugged. "Nothing. I have nothing to say to them." She smiled, but there was something disturbing in her eyes. "Be careful, Sarah. They're not the type to just let it go." She was right. In the evening, when I picked Mark up from school and we returned home, I had 18 missed calls on my phone. Dad had called 6 times, Mom 7, and Emma 5, plus a dozen messages on Messenger. I opened the conversation with Emma. "Sarah, why aren't you answering your phone?" "Mom says she saw you on Riverside Avenue. Did you move?" "Why aren't you saying anything?" "We're family. Why are you ignoring us?" "Is it because of the barbecue? Seriously. Are you offended by some photo?" I read and felt something cold and sharp growing inside me. Offended by a photo. As if that was the only reason. As if it wasn't because they didn't say a word when my apartment burned down. As if it wasn't because of 5 years of silence. Mom wrote separately, "Sarah, we're worried. Where did you get the money for a new apartment? Who did you get involved with? Call us immediately." I smiled. They're worried. Now. When they heard I had money, and they heard, of course, through acquaintances. It's a small town, everyone knows each other. Some neighbor in my new building turned out to be a friend of my mom's colleague. She saw me with Mark at the entrance and asked if I was Sarah Kristen, Vitya's daughter. I nodded politely, not understanding what she meant. but she had already run off to tell everyone that Sarah had rented an apartment in a new neighborhood, a nice expensive one, that he looked good, was neatly dressed, that the boy had new shoes, expensive ones, and of course, it got to Emma, and Emma immediately called my mom, and it began. I put down the phone and went to make dinner for Mark. He was sitting at the table drawing something in his notebook. "Mom, when is Dad coming back?" he asked without looking up. Matthew had come twice that week. The first time, he stood timidly at the door with a toy car in his hands, not knowing what to say. Mark looked at him with curiosity, but without much enthusiasm. "This is your dad," I said simply. Mark nodded. "Hi," Matthew said, his voice trembling. They sat down on the floor. Matthew showed him how the car worked. Mark listened, sometimes asking questions. I stood in the kitchen, making coffee and trying not to think about how strange it was. The second time, Matthew came with a ball. They went out to the backyard, kicked the ball around. Mark laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh in weeks. I looked out the window and felt a mixture of relief and jealousy. Relief that Mark was doing well. Jealousy that Matthew had entered his life so easily while I had been dragging everything on my own for 5 years. "I don't know, honey," I replied. "Maybe on the weekend." "He's cool," Mark said. "He promised we'd go to the amusement park." "He did?" "Yeah. He said there's a big Ferris wheel there, and he said you're coming too." I didn't respond. Matthew hadn't said anything to me about an amusement park. The phone rang again. "Emma." I hung up. A minute later, a message came. "Why aren't you answering? We're family." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I typed a reply. "I only take calls from people I know." I sent it and put the phone away. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I had never done anything like this in my life. I had never talked back, put anyone in their place, or said no. I had always been obedient, quiet, easygoing, the kind of person who didn't cause any trouble. But now, something in me had changed. Maybe it was the fire. Maybe it was Matthew. Maybe it was just fatigue from being ignored when no one needed me, and then suddenly remembered when they thought I had something valuable. My phone vibrated again. Now it was my mom. I looked at the name on the screen and ignored it too. A message came from her. "Sarah, this is not serious. We are your parents. We have a right to know what's going on with you." I didn't reply. Emma wrote again. "Are you really offended by the barbecue? God, Sarah, grow up. It was just a family gathering. You didn't say you wanted to come." I read it and laughed. I laughed, even though I wanted to cry. They really thought it was about the barbecue, that I was upset because I wasn't invited to their party. They didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, that it was about the silence when I begged for help, that I hadn't existed for them for 5 years, and now I had suddenly appeared because someone said I had money. I blocked notifications from the family chat and from personal messages, all 3 of them, Dad, Mom, Emma. I just pressed the button and felt the weight lift off my shoulders. The next day at work, my boss called me into his office. "Kristen, are you okay?" he asked, looking at me over his glasses. "Yes. Why do you ask?" "Because your mom called here this morning. She said you weren't answering your calls and she was worried. She wanted to know if you were at work." I froze. "She called work?" "Yes. I told her you were here and that everything was fine. But if you're having problems—" "No problems," I interrupted. "Just family misunderstandings." "Sorry to bother you." He nodded, but looked at me doubtfully. In the evening, when I picked Mark up from school, Emma was standing by the gate. I saw her from a distance. She was leaning on her old car, looking at her phone. Dressed in jeans and a leather jacket, her hair loose. She looked confident and carefree as always. I took Mark by the hand and was about to walk past, but she looked up and saw me. "Sarah!" She came toward me, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Finally!" "I thought you were ignoring me." "That's exactly what I'm doing," I said coldly. Her smile faltered. "Listen, what happened? Why aren't you answering?" "Because I have nothing to talk to you about." "Seriously? Because of that barbecue? Sarah, that's ridiculous. I stopped and looked her in the eyes. Emma, when my apartment burned down, I wrote in the family chat. I wrote that we had nowhere to go. You read it, Mom read it, Dad read it. No one replied. And an hour later, you posted a photo from the barbecue with the caption, "For family only." How do you think I was supposed to feel? She blinked, as if she didn't understand. Well, I didn't know you were so serious. I thought you'd find somewhere to stay. I did. At a friend's, because my family didn't respond. But you never ask for help. You're always so independent, so self-sufficient. How were we supposed to know you really needed help? I smiled, but it was a cold smile. I wrote, "We have nowhere to go." What else should I have written? Please help? I had no roof over my head, Emma. I had a child, and my family didn't say anything. She pressed her lips together. Listen, I'm sorry, okay? Maybe we should have responded, but now we're worried. Mom said you moved into a new apartment. Where did you get the money, Sarah? Who did you get involved with? And there it was, the real reason for her visit. It's none of your business. It is my business. You're my sister. What if you're in trouble? What if someone's taking advantage of you? No one's taking advantage of me. Mark's father has finally decided to take responsibility. He's giving money for his son's support. Legally and honestly. Does that answer your question? Emma's eyes widened. Matthew, the guy who disappeared 5 years ago. Him? And you? Are you back together? No, he's just helping out financially. That's all. She looked at me as if I were speaking Chinese. And how much does he give you? I laughed. That's none of your business, Emma. Tell Mom and Dad that I'm fine, and that I don't need your concern. Not now. Not after everything. I took Mark by the hand and walked to the car. Emma stood and watched me go. I didn't turn around. That evening, Matthew came over again. He brought pizza. Mark loved pizza, and they sat in the living room, eating and watching cartoons. I sat in the kitchen drinking tea and listening to Mark laugh. Matthew came in when Mark went to brush his teeth. "How are you?" he asked. "Fine." "You don't look fine. You look tired." I looked up at him. "My sister came by today. She wanted to know where I got the money." He frowned. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're helping me." She didn't like that. He sat down across from me at the table. "Sarah, if you're having problems with your family because of me, I've always had problems with my family. You have nothing to do with it." He was silent. Then he said, "I wanted to ask you something. On Saturday, I want to take Mark to the amusement park. He said you would come too?" "He said that?" "Yes, and I want you to come too, if you don't mind." I thought about it. The idea of spending the day with Matthew and Mark seemed strange. We weren't a family. We weren't even friends. We were... what? 2 people raising a child together? "Okay," I said finally. "We'll go." He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen on his face. "Great, I'll pick you up at 10. When he left, I lay down on the sofa and stared at the ceiling. My phone lay nearby, silent. No calls from my family. Emma must have told them about Matthew, and they were discussing it now. Discussing how I'd done something stupid again, how I'd gotten involved with the same guy, how I'd be used again. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I really didn't care what they thought. I closed my eyes and fell asleep without thinking about them. And on Saturday, we went to the amusement park. Me, Mark, and Matthew. And Mark was so happy he was glowing. And I smiled too, looking at him. And Matthew too. And it felt right. Not perfect, but right. The message from Matthew came on Wednesday evening while I was making dinner. My phone vibrated on the counter. I wiped my hands and looked at the screen. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you call me when you're free?" I frowned. We saw each other the day before yesterday. Everything was fine. Mark was telling him about school. Matthew was listening attentively, nodding, asking questions. They were building a construction set together. I was sitting next to them with a book and peeking in from time to time. The atmosphere was calm, almost cozy. What could have happened in 2 days? I dialed his number. He answered right away. "Hello," his voice sounded tense. "What happened?" He sighed. "Your sister wrote to me today on Instagram. She introduced herself as Emma, Sarah's sister. She wants to talk about you and Mark." I froze, feeling a chill run down my spine. "What did she say?" "A lot. I'll send you the screenshots. But basically, she tried to convince me that you're using me for money, that you're emotionally unstable after the fire, that Mark might be in danger with you, and I should consider getting custody." I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. Is she serious? Very. At first I thought it was some kind of spam or fake account. But I looked at her page. It was definitely her. Photos with your parents, with both of you as children. Real. Oh my God. Sarah, I don't believe a word she wrote. I see you with Mark. I see what kind of mother you are. But I thought you should know. The messages with screenshots arrived a minute later. I opened them and started reading, feeling my anger grow with every line. "Hi, Matthew. I'm Emma, Sarah's sister. I know this may seem strange, but I need to talk to you about her. Did you know her apartment burned down recently? She's been under a lot of stress. I'm worried about her. She hasn't been acting quite right lately. I've seen that you've been helping her financially. That's very noble of you, but I'm afraid she might be taking advantage of you. Sarah has always been, how should I put it? A little manipulative, especially with men. And I'm really worried about Mark. The apartment burned down under strange circumstances, you know? Maybe you should check if it's safe for a child there. Maybe you should think about being more involved in his life, even guardianship if Sarah can't handle it. I'm not saying this out of malice, but because I love my sister. But someone has to look at the situation soberly. I'm here if you want to talk more." I looked at those words and couldn't believe it. My sister. My own sister wrote to my child's father that I was manipulative, unstable, that my child was in danger. Sarah? Matthew's voice on the phone was cautious. "Are you there?" "Yes," I squeezed out. "I'm here." I replied that I appreciated her concern, but I would handle it myself. I blocked her after that, just so you know. "Thank you for telling me." "You're welcome. If anything else comes up, I'll let you know right away." I hung up and sat down on the floor in the middle of the kitchen, holding the phone in my hands. The pot on the stove was hissing. The water was boiling away, but I didn't care. Emma, my sister, who never supported me when I got pregnant, who didn't come to the hospital when I gave birth, who said nothing when my apartment burned down. Now she's writing to Matthew, trying to turn him against me. Why? Because I cut them off? Because I don't answer the phone? Because I finally said no? Mark came out of his room. "Mom, when's dinner?" I quickly wiped my eyes. When did I have time to cry? And got up. "Right now, dear." "It's almost ready." I didn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling and thinking. I thought about Emma, about how she was always the favorite, how Mom praised her for every little thing and barely noticed me, how Dad took her fishing and left me at home, how Emma was always in the center of family photos and I was on the side, a little blurry. I thought I was used to it. I thought it didn't bother me anymore. But it turns out it does, and it hurts a lot. I decided not to react, not to stoop to her level, just to move on, ignore it, forget it. And then, a week later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it. Standing on the doorstep was a woman of about 45 in a business suit with a folder in her hands. "Good afternoon. Are you Sarah Kristen?" "Yes." "My name is Janet Pollard. I'm a social worker with Child Services. We've received a complaint about the living conditions of a child at this address. May I come in?" I felt the ground slip away from under my feet. A complaint? What complaint? An anonymous one, but we are required to investigate every report. It's standard procedure, don't worry. I just need to look around the apartment and talk to the child. Mark was sitting in the living room watching cartoons. He turned around, saw a strange woman, and became wary. "Mom, who's that?" "That's Miss Janet, dear. She just wants to look at our apartment. It's okay." Janet entered and looked around carefully. She opened the cabinets, looked in the refrigerator, and checked the bathroom. She took notes. Then she sat down next to Mark. "Hi, I'm Janet. What's your name?" "Mark." "Tell me, Mark, do you like living here?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's cool here. I have my own room and lots of toys." "Does your mom take good care of you?" "Yes, she's the best." "Does anyone else live here besides the two of you?" "No, just us, but my dad comes sometimes." Janet looked at me. "Does the child's father live separately?" "Yes, we're not together. He just visits and spends time with his son." She nodded and made a few more notes. 20 minutes later, she closed the folder. "Everything looks fine, Miss Kristen. The apartment is clean, the child is well cared for and happy. I'm closing this case as unfounded. Sorry for the trouble." When she left, I sat down on the sofa and trembled. Someone had filed a complaint against me, an anonymous one. Someone said my child was in danger. I knew who it was. In the evening, Laura called. "Sarah, you won't believe this. Remember my friend David who works in social services?" "Well?" "He told me today. Listen, this is confidential. He could get in trouble, but he's worried about you. They received a complaint about you." Anonymous, but he accidentally heard a recording of the call. A woman, young, with obvious irritation in her voice. She said that you were living with a strange man, that the apartment was in terrible condition, that the child was unclothed and hungry. All lies, of course, but they had to check. "Laura, I know. They came to see me today." "What? And how?" "Everything's fine." They checked it out and closed the case. "But Laura, David wouldn't be able to recognize the voice?" "He said the voice was similar to the one he heard when I called him once and your sister was talking next to him. We were all having dinner together, remember? A year ago or so. He's not 100% sure, but it sounded very similar to him." I closed my eyes. "Emma, it seems so. Sarah, what are you going to do?" I was silent. I thought. I felt the anger I had been holding back all this time finally bursting out. I don't know, but something will happen. The next morning, I asked Laura to send me everything David could get his hands on, without breaking any rules, of course. He sent a short audio clip, a woman's voice, irritated, sharp. "I'm worried about the child. The conditions there are dangerous. Someone needs to check." The quality wasn't perfect, but I recognized the voice. Emma. I opened my correspondence with Matthew and took screenshots of everything she had written to him. Then I opened the family chat. I hadn't written there for a month, but I hadn't left. I just muted it. Now I unmuted it and typed a message. I attached the screenshots. I attached the audio. I wrote, "Is this what a family does? Or is this what a person who is afraid that someone else might be happy does?" I sent it. I put my phone down and waited. The reply came in 3 minutes. Mom. "Emma, what is this?" Then Dad. "Emma, explain immediately." Emma typed something, then deleted it. Then she typed again. "It's not what you think. I was just worried about Sarah. She's not herself since the fire, and I wanted to..." I wrote, "You wrote to my child's father that I'm manipulative and unstable. You filed a complaint with social services, saying Mark was in danger. Is that caring, Emma?" Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then Mom. "Sarah, can we talk in person? This isn't for chat." I wrote, 5 years ago, I asked for support when I found out I was pregnant. You called it a disgrace. A month ago, I asked for help when my apartment burned down. You didn't say a word. Now my sister is trying to take my child away from me. And you want to talk in person? No, thank you. I have nothing to talk to you about." I left the chat and blocked all 3 of them. Forever. The phone lay on the table, silent. I looked at it and felt relief. Not joy, not satisfaction from revenge, just relief. as if something heavy that I had been carrying for years had finally fallen from my shoulders. Mark came up to me and hugged me. "Mom, why are you crying?" I didn't even notice I was crying. "Just because, dear. Sometimes adults cry when they feel relieved." Relieved from what? From finally letting go of what hurts them to hold on to. He nodded as if he understood, although I doubt he did. In the evening, Laura came over with wine and pizza. "So, do you feel like a vengeful queen?" I laughed. "No, I feel free." "That's better," she said, clinking glasses with me. "To freedom, and to toxic people staying in the past. To freedom." We drank, and for the first time in many years, I felt like I was breathing deeply. Emma didn't write anymore. Neither did my parents. I didn't know what they thought, how they reacted, and I didn't care. I moved on, without them, and it was the best decision of my life. November came with rain and cold winds, but my life was finally filled with warmth. 3 months passed unnoticed. 3 months without family drama, without toxic phone calls, without the feeling that I always owed someone something. In September, my boss called me in and said that the company wanted to expand the marketing department. They were looking for an SMM manager. He offered me the position. At first, I thought I had misheard him. A manager? Me, who had been simply posting and creating stories for 3 years. "You are the most creative person on the team, Kristen," he said, "and the most responsible. Our social media numbers have grown by 40% since you took over. We want you to head up the new department. The salary is twice as much, plus bonuses and benefits." I accepted. Of course I accepted. And for the first time in my life, I felt that I was valued not out of pity or obligation, but because I was actually good at something. With my new salary, I was able to afford a bigger apartment. Not luxurious, but spacious and bright. 3 rooms, 1 for Mark, 1 for me, and the third for a study. Large windows overlooking the park. Mark was thrilled. "Mom, this place is so cool," he shouted, running around the empty rooms. "Can I invite my friends over?" "Of course, dear. This is your home. Your home. Our home. Finally." Matthew helped with the move. He came with a truck he rented, brought boxes, and packed things with me. We worked in silence, but it wasn't an awkward silence. Just peaceful. "You're amazing," he said when we were done. "Seriously." "I look at you and I see how strong you are." I smiled. "I don't feel strong. I'm just doing what needs to be done." That's strength. There was no romance between us, not even a hint of it. We didn't hug, kiss, or flirt, but there was respect between us. He came 3 times a week, took Mark for walks, to the movies, to the park. Sometimes he stayed for dinner. We talked about Mark, about work, about life. He talked about his father's company, about difficult cases. I talked about new projects at work, about ideas for campaigns. He didn't ask for a second chance. He didn't say he regretted it, that he wanted to get back what we had. He understood that what was gone was gone. There was only now, and now we were parents. Together, but separately. And it worked. Strange, but it worked. One day, when I was picking Mark up from school, Laura approached me with a strange expression on her face. "Your mother came to my work," she said without greeting me. I froze. "What?" "Vida. She came to the clinic and said she had a toothache, but the tooth was just an excuse. She wanted to talk to me. About you." "And what did she say?" Laura sighed. "That she's sorry. That she and Ethan have been thinking a lot over the last few months. That she understands how badly she treated you, and that she wants to apologize, but you're not answering your phone." I was silent. I didn't know how I felt. Angry? Relieved? Indifferent? "She left you a letter." Laura took an envelope out of her bag. "She asked me to give it to you. I said I couldn't promise you'd read it, but she gave it to me anyway." I took the envelope. It was light. An ordinary white envelope with my name on the front. My mother's handwriting was neat, slightly slanted. "Will you read it?" Laura asked. I don't know. The envelope lay on the kitchen table for 3 days. I walked past it, looked at it, but didn't open it. Mark asked what it was, and I said it was just some papers. On the 4th day, when Mark fell asleep, I poured myself some tea, sat down at the table, and opened the envelope. Inside were 2 pages written in the same neat handwriting. Sarah, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I have the right to ask you this, but I have to try. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything, for how I behaved when you told me you were pregnant, for calling it a disgrace, for not supporting you when you needed it most. I grew up in a family where reputation was everything, where what people would say mattered more than how your children felt, and I passed that curse on to you. I was afraid of what our friends and neighbors would say. I was afraid they would judge us, and in that fear, I forgot the most important thing. You, my daughter, who was scared and hurt. I know I can't change the past. I know that the words, "I'm sorry," are not enough, but I want you to know that I am proud of you. I look at how you rose above everything that happened, how you raised Mark, how you are building your life, and I am proud. You are stronger than me. You always have been. Emma regrets it too. She doesn't know how to say it, but I can see it. She's used to being the center of attention, and when you stopped needing us, she got scared that she had lost control. What she did, filing a complaint, writing to Matthew, is unforgivable. I don't excuse her, but I want you to know that she's suffering too. We're not asking you to come back. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're just asking for the opportunity. Someday, if you want, to talk, to see Mark, to be at least some part of your life. But if you say no, we'll understand. We deserve that no. With love, Mom. I finished reading and put the letter on the table. I didn't cry. I just sat and stared out the dark window. She regretted it. Maybe sincerely, maybe not. But she regretted it. Did it matter? I didn't know. Not yet. A week later, Emma called me. I hadn't picked up the phone in a month and a half, but this time something compelled me to answer. Maybe it was my mother's letter. Maybe it was just curiosity. Hello? Sarah. Emma's voice was hoarse and tired. You picked up. I did. Silence. I could hear her breathing. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. I got fired, she said quietly, almost in a whisper. From the coffee shop, there was a scandal. A customer was rude to me, and I lost my temper. I yelled at him, said something I shouldn't have. The manager fired me on the spot. Sarah, I don't know what to do. I'm running out of money for rent. Mom and Dad say it's my own fault that I need to learn responsibility, but I don't know how. Can you lend me some money? Just for a month, until I find a new job. I listened and felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, no anger, just emptiness. Emma, I said calmly, I can't help you. But not because I don't want to, because you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, like I did. Sarah, please. When I got pregnant, you left me alone. You weren't there when I gave birth. You didn't say a word when my apartment burned down. I learned to cope on my own. Now it's your turn. You can't be so cruel. We're sisters. That's exactly why I'm telling you the truth. If I gave you money, you wouldn't learn anything. You'd come back when you needed it again, and so on and so forth. But I'm not a lifeline, Emma. I'm your sister, not your mother. She cried. Real bitter tears. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry for everything. For complaining, for Matthew, for everything. I was jealous. Jealous that you finally had it all. That Matthew was back. That you didn't need us. I know. Then why won't you help me? Because the best help I can give you is to let you fall, so you can learn to get up. She hung up. I didn't call back. On Saturday, Mark, Matthew, and I went to the park. It was a cool autumn day. The leaves were turning red and yellow, and the wind was fresh and clean. Mark immediately ran to the swings, while Matthew and I sat down on a nearby bench. "How are you?" he asked. "Fine. Strange, but fine." "What's strange?" I wondered. "The fact that I don't feel guilty." "Mom wrote a letter. Emma called and asked for money, and I don't feel guilty for not rushing to help them." He nodded. "That's normal. You don't owe them anything. They're family." Family isn't just blood, Sarah. Family is those who are there for you when times are tough, the ones who hold your hand when everything is burning. And if they weren't there then, they have no right to demand anything now. I looked at him. "You've changed. So have you." Mark ran up to us, red from running, laughing. "Dad, Mom, come with me. There's this slide. It's really high." Matthew looked at me and smiled. "Shall we go?" I nodded. We followed Mark. He pulled us by the hands, showed us everything around, talked nonstop, and I thought, here it is, family. Not perfect, not like in fairy tales, but real. Mark, Matthew, Laura, people who were there when I needed them most. And blood? Blood is just biology, nothing more. We climbed the hill. Mark rolled down, screaming. Matthew ran after him. I stood at the top, looking at them, at the park, at the city around us, and I felt something unusual. Freedom. I am free. Free from expectations, from guilt, from the feeling that I always owe something. Free to be myself. Free to build my life the way I want. Free to love those who deserve it and let go of those who hurt me. And that's the best feeling in the world. Matthew looked up at me and waved. I smiled and waved back. No, we're not a couple. Maybe we never will be. But we're a team. And for Mark, and maybe for us, that's enough. I climbed down the slide and took Mark by the hand. "Let's go home, sweetie. It's time for dinner. Will Dad come with us?" I looked at Matthew. He raised his eyebrows questioningly. "If he wants to," I said. "I want to," he replied simply. And we walked together. 3 people who found each other in the most unexpected way and built something new, something of their own. Family isn't always blood. Family is those who hold your hand when your house is on fire. And sometimes the greatest love comes not from forgiveness, but from finally allowing yourself to live without guilt, without fear, without toxic people who drain your energy. I learned to let go, and it set me free. Would you forgive? Are there things that cannot be forgiven? And can someone who disappeared at the most difficult moment come back and become a source of support?